What would happen if $600 million fell out of the sky? We'll tell you in just a second. Also, is this how a Ponzi scheme is supposed to end? Some people say no. It's all next. Mitchell Talks the News 9 Sessions with Aaron Brillbeck. Thanks for joining us again. This was it was a bizarre week on the national level. There is a summer solstice, there's a meteor shower, a full moon, and that's all happening this weekend. Is that bizarre?
And there's a wall. Wait, there's not a wall.
There's not a wall.
And there's a federal budget. Wait, there's not a federal budget. Yeah, it's...
Could you do this for me? Have you ever seen one of those videos where that a car, like usually California, where it's going down the road and the cash falls out of a armored car or something, people are jumping out and running? Did we not have one of those in Oklahoma this week?
That's exactly what happened in Oklahoma. We'd got the news that we've got a $612 million, I don't want to say surplus, but $612 million more this year than we had last year. That comes from a number of different sources. A lot of it is the booming U.S. economy, a lot of it is oil prices, and a lot of it is due to the legislature making some legislative changes, which led to more money in our bankroll. But as soon as we came out with the information of that $612 million, well, that's when the hands started coming out. So we talked with the governor about it. She is extremely pleased about these numbers, the amount of money that we have, not only in, I don't want to say, again, extra money, but more money than we had over last year. Plus, we're going to have about $800 million in our rainy day fund.
We are less dependent on oil right now, but with the current law changes that we made, it is going back up a little bit, but we've been hovering about 5% of our general revenue is relying on oil, and we diversified our economy tremendously. If you were to see some of the charts and graphs of all the different industries that we brought in besides oil, we really have done a great job diversifying our economy. But the changes with GPT tax, gross production taxes, certainly will increase more of our revenue on oil and gas. But they've taken a pretty conservative approach. They had 3 economists look at all the projections worldwide, nationally. That was one of the things I questioned about it. Do we feel pretty confident in our projections? And of course, it's hard to predict those things, but based upon good information from the economists, we feel like we're in a pretty good place.
So she's pleased about that. We also talked with the state auditor. This guy's a numbers guy, Gary Jones. You know Gary well. This guy's a numbers guy. He says what makes this budget effective, what makes it work, is that we're not doing what we've done in the past, which is relying on those one-time monies, relying on those one-time funds.
We're not dealing with one-time funds. We're not playing accounting tricks. We're dealing with real dollars. And you know, the majority of that money comes from of course, the increase in the price of oil, but also taking it from the 2% for the first three years up to 5% makes a significant difference. That money, a lot of that money is already spoken for. It's going to education. You know, the increase in the tobacco tax is going to health care, and the diesel and gasoline increase is going to roads and bridges. So we have a lot more sustainable budget, something where you can really deal with it.
But within hours of the announcement of this $612 million more that we have, brings us up to an $8.2 billion that we can spend for next year, which is a record high. That'll be for the 2020 fiscal year 2020. Just hours after that announcement, we get word that OEA basically wants the vast majority of that.
Do you remember candidates made education a top priority in the election year, hoping to keep teachers in the classrooms here in Oklahoma? Now the OEA says it's time to make good on those campaign promises.
The group is asking legislators for more than $400 million for raises and additional funding for classrooms. News 9's Dana Hurtnicki joins us now live at the state capitol with the story. Dana?
Yeah, OEA released its legislative agenda here this afternoon. New figures just released this morning say the state has an additional $612 million this year. So OEA says this is doable even without a tax increase. Before last year's teacher strike, the OEA laid out their demands. That included a $10,000 raise for teachers over the next 3 years, along with raises for support personnel and a $200 million increase in school operations. OEA says lawmakers granted 95% of that.
While 2018 was a step in the right direction, work remains.
OEA President Alicia Pai says Oklahoma, though, still lags behind in per pupil funding, and the teacher shortage is just getting worse. So this year, the OEA will be asking for a $3,000 raise for teachers, a $2,500 raise for education support professionals, another $150 million for school operations, and an 8% cost of living adjustment for education retirees.
It's time for our elected officials to live up to their promises, to put their money where their mouth is, literally and figuratively.
OEA's proposal is a bit less than State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister already requested from the legislature. But earlier today, she enforced her priority this year will be on increasing classroom funding.
Our focus is going to be on strategic investment in classrooms, and we want to reduce class sizes.
Oklahoma now ranks 37th in teacher pay and 44th overall in pure pupil spending. Reporting live on the scene on the story at the Capitol, Dana Hurtnicki, News 9.
So let's kind of break that down just a little bit. It's $612 million above and beyond what we had last year, but about $200 million of that is already accounted for other things that we have to pay for that we didn't have to pay for last year. So that leaves us with roughly $400 million more, and OEA is saying, give it all to us, we want it.
Well, it's not going to happen, but let me ask you this. My understanding is this budget was figured this last year at about $53 a barrel.
Right.
Right? And the fact is we're more dependent on the gross production tax than we were, correct?
Yep.
No problem there. And so the last I checked on Thursday, oil was down to a one-year low,
Yep.
$47 a barrel. Now, my math, which is not very good, indicates that that's less than what the budget was figured on. Is this a mirage? I mean, is this money actually going to be there, or this is, if we see $37 barrel oil, is it all a mirage? I mean, what are the ifs, ands, and buts?
And those are all very good questions. The way that the budget works, Board of Equalization meets in December. They've got the preliminary numbers. They certify those preliminary numbers. Then they're going to meet in February again before the legislature meets, and they'll have a better handle on what the exact numbers are. And that'll put into place the fluctuations that we see in the economy, the fluctuations that we see with oil. But Kevin Stitt, Governor-elect Kevin Stitt, we talked with him, and he brought up a good point. He says, we've got to start socking aside some money in savings for those fluctuations.
But I also want to warn the legislatures and the agency heads, this is not a blank check. This is not something that you can just come in and say, hey, how can we fund our different pet projects? Because I was elected as governor to make sure that we do government differently, that we hold agencies accountable, that we deliver services to move us up to the top 10. And so just a couple things that we have to fund this year that are outside the budget. Number one, we've got $100 million in additional ad valorem reimbursements to our counties because of wind subsidies that were done. We also have a $30 million Oklahoma doctors graduate medical education that has to be funded this year. We also are going to make sure that we take care of our teachers with their health care benefits and costs going up. We've got to make sure we fund that. There's also an additional $17 million in interest payments to satisfy bonds, and some of it is on the capital renovations here, so we've got that added expense.
So what he's saying is he wants not $800 million, which is what we'll have in rainy day. That's not enough. He wants $2 billion of a cushion in there. That's a lot of money.
All right, so what his basic thrust was, don't jump out of the car and start going for the cash and the money falling out of the back of the Brinks truck. So it could be $612 million, or it could be $400 million come February.
Yep.
In other words, right now it's a house built on shifting sand. Is that a good way to sum it up?
Yeah, and honestly, it's probably going to be somewhere in between there. It's probably going to be somewhere in the 500, depending upon what happens with the national economy, depending upon what happens. Again, right now there's a lot going on with Trump, with China, with oil. There's a lot of things to look at. The U.S. economy overall is pretty strong. Consumer confidence is still extraordinarily strong. But we're seeing stuff on Wall Street that we haven't seen since the Great Depression.
The worst December since the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Makes me want to do this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you have to look at this and take a step back. Now, can I ask about two or three other aspects of it? Senator Treat is introducing legislation, looks like a office to deal with transparency about where the money goes. There's only like 3 or 4 people out there that can check these agencies. We all know that these agencies, we've talked about this for years, are out there when it comes budget time, are out there telling people hooey about where they're at. Do I need to go into it? I mean, you know what agency we're talking about. We've got boards and commissions running amok. You've already got a commission that's working on transparency. Now the governor-elect has appointed a budget office headed by former Senator Mazie. So this looks to me like open season on waste. Am I wrong about that?
That's what everybody's going to be focusing on. You mentioned the tree legislation. We want to keep a close eye on that because that's talking about transparency, but the way that it's written, it looks as though this office would be reporting directly to the legislature. As we know, the legislature has exempted itself from all types of sunshine laws. So when we try to get information from the legislature, they don't have to give it to us. So my concerns about transparency with this transparency office are that it may not be as transparent as we hope for.
You did an interview this last few days with the governor.
Yes.
Our current governor. I started thinking that we were starting to see legacy creation, not creation, but burnishing of legacy in the past couple of weeks, starting with the commutation. Your interview with the governor was very fair, and not many people have done this with her lately because she's not really been a player for a very long time now with the new governor and a new legislature coming in.
Lame duck.
What do you think about how she describes her legacy, her perspective?
She's made it very clear, not only in that interview, but also with the Board of Equalization meeting. She's taking a lot of credit for the amount of money that we have coming in right now. She's taking a lot of credit right now for the amount of money that we'll have in rainy day fund, approximately $870 million. She spoke of that, in fact, during the Board of Equalization meeting. So she's clearly concerned about what people's perception is going to be of her legacy. And she keeps on pounding these same things over and over again. And, you know, to be fair, was she a strong leader? Probably not. But did she accomplish some good things? Yes. Were some good things accomplished under her watch? Absolutely. But is a lot of it also attributable to the U.S. economy and to oil prices? And yes.
A lot of people are putting it into two acts. There's her governorship before the oil bust and her governorship in the post-oil bust, and that gets entirely different grades.
Yeah, agreed. In the first 4 years, we'll say, of her administration, things were pretty healthy. And we talked about this before. I mean, in a good economy, a coconut could govern. When things start turning bad, and things turn pretty bad for the state of Oklahoma, that's when it really tests your mettle. And that's when I think she really started failing as a leader. She didn't have the necessary leadership skills that she should have had, and she didn't have the power, the gravitas, that someone with her resume should have had.
What are you thinking? We're going to go into basically a 2-week black hole, right, in terms of news and activity. When we come out of this 2-week period, what are you looking for?
We're going to be seeing Governor Stitt, when he is governor, he's going to start flexing his muscles. And he's going to start trying to establish himself early on as alpha dog. That's what he's done in business. He's got to show that same type of alpha dog mentality in dealing with the legislature. I think he's already done that. He, right after this announcement of $600 million additional revenue, first thing he did, held a press conference and
said, "Don't get greedy."
Told the legislature, hands off.
Yep.
So I mean, he drew the line in the sand, and he's already flexing a little bit of muscle. So
that was good.
It was a good
to
idea.
run out there and say because there were so many agencies and special interest groups. Back to the video of the money falling out of the car on a San Diego freeway. Also, I'm beginning to wonder. It seems like it's slowed down a little bit on appointments in terms of public announcements of people in terms of the cabinet. Now, this last week, Rusty Rhodes,
right.
General Thompson, I'll put back. We said those are great appointments. We know now about this former state senator Mazie who's going to be running this budget office. But we still have stories that are coming from Prague, Oklahoma, and Pauls Valley, Oklahoma. The Democrats are saying, we want Medicaid expansion. The governor-elect has said no way. But that is a ton of money.
$900 million.
And the argument is, well, but we won't be able to afford it. Just like that goofy bill a couple of weeks ago where we're going to do away with Medicaid for pregnant women, which only applied to them when it was only prenatal care, and once the baby was on the ground, so to speak, then it stopped. But that's a lot of money. Democrats say we're going to do it legislatively, and they won't.
Nope.
Okay, they don't have the numbers to do it. Or talking about going to the ballot. There's some people in the Republican Party that are saying we need to do Medicaid expansion. Okay?
Yes.
You know it, I know it. Nobody's going to run out and hold a presser tomorrow.
Nope.
There was a bunch of Republicans and conservatives who said we need that money. How do you see this playing out?
I see it's going to go to the people. It's going to be a vote of the people. It's really the only way that it's going to happen. There are already some organizations that are talking about putting that into place under the expectation that even if it gets through the legislature, which it's not, Stitt's just he's going to veto it. So, yeah, the only way this is going to happen is through a vote of the people. And again, we're talking, it's a $100 million investment by the state of Oklahoma. We get $900 million in federal dollars in return. And the way that legislation can be written, a poison pill can be put into it so that if the federal dollars stop, the state dollars stop. There's no risk.
It's always been that way, hasn't it? And
It's always been that way.
That's not something that you've
Nope.
heard a whole lot with the interest groups. I'm beginning to wonder, when you see what's happened with Prague this week and the stories that you've done and others have done on Pauls Valley and the stress the system is under, do you think that, and by the way, the federal government this month, in December, spent twice as much money as they took in? Just let that one wash over you for just a moment, all right?
Could you do that at home?
No, couldn't do it. And the fact is, but it's happening on the federal level. So this money, again, we're back talking about money as a mirage, but is the Republican majority going to be able to withstand the pressure if we keep seeing hospitals fail and nursing homes fail and things of this nature?
Understanding that the Republican Party now has full control of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, they also shoulder the blame for when things go wrong. And if these hospitals are closing down, who are you going to blame?
There are a lot of Republican legislatures around the country who've taken Medicaid expansion money.
Yes. And we're not. And the only reason that we're not is because it's still tied to President Obama. And if we could just get ourselves past that and do Medicaid expansion, it's a ton of money. And it's going to help a ton of people. I mean, let's not forget about that part of it. This is going to help a lot of people. Why not take the money?
Because you answered your own question, because it has Obamacare,
Exactly.
which, by the way, a federal judge has said is illegal. And now the Republicans who are been on the federal level been saying we need to get rid of this for years and years. We're about to be rid of it. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, and they do not want this in their lap. Okay?
Right.
This is something they've been wishing for that every one of them will tell you privately, to be honest. They'll say, well, this is not a good time for this.
No.
As the wheels come off in Washington. That's very interesting.
Well, it's such a difficult thing to deal with. And the legislation is so incredibly complicated. You're not going to please everybody while you're doing it. And you're right. While in public, Republicans are saying, yeah, Obamacare bad. A lot of them privately are saying, yeah, we don't want to shoulder that. We don't want the burden of that. Let's just leave it as it is. We'll complain about it. It's easier to complain about something than it is to actually fix it.
Let's switch to law and order for just a moment. We talked a little bit last week about this upcoming effort to institute some more smart on crime legislation. We know that Leader Eccles and Representative Dunnington are going to author a bill on State Question 780 that's going to go do some retroactivity, some of our sentencing. We also know that there are some fringe groups on the right and the left, some who want to do a lot more, lock them up, throw away the key. We've got some wacky groups on the left that want to do away with failure to protect and lessen the penalties for strangulation. Which is interesting is that the press has not really gotten into this. Present company excluded. I don't know why that is. Maybe we'll divvy into that at some point. However, there was a story this week about this Ponzi scheme, this publishing scheme this week, and when I read what the penalty was going to be, or the sentence these people were going to have, I had to sit back for just a moment and scratch my head. And it has to do with these people, this publishing, these dirt bags that were taking people's money to publish books. Now, these are some folks that were out there in the pretty papers, you know, the weekend papers and all of this. I were at the parties and showing the good life. Yeah. They scam all these people out of all this money. Take it away as to what just happened.
Richard and Ryan Tate, father and son team with Tate Publishing, scammed people out of, that we know of, $800,000. That's what we're able to prove, $800,000. Realistically, you know, it's a lot more money than just $800,000. So they wound up pleading no contest to 44 charges, many of them felony charges, including embezzlement, violation of the RICO Act, just all kinds of Incredible stuff, and you know how much time they're going to be spending.
Same thing mobsters plead.
Same stuff that was created to go after mobsters. Embezzlement, just all kinds of things. 44 charges.
Real scuzz bucket stuff.
Scuzz bucket stuff. How much time are they getting behind bars? Not a day. Not a freaking day. Not one day behind bars. For all the people they conned, all the people they scammed, not a day behind bars. And you and I were in agreement in terms of criminal justice reform. It needs to be done. But at the same time, if you do a crime where you steal $800,000 from 2,200 people throughout the world, not just throughout the country, throughout Oklahoma, throughout the world, and you're not spending a day in jail, not one.
Let me ask you about this point you just made. These are people all over the world. Could that be one of the reasons why that there wasn't jail time involved? Because you didn't have thousands of Oklahomans who got ripped off and were down at the Attorney General's office with pitchforks and torches raising Cain about this.
In part, but you know, I spoke with a woman from Oklahoma who was one of the people conned by these scumbuckets.
The owners of a publishing company have admitted to bilking more than 2,000 clients out of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But some of those former clients are livid by the punishment the father-son duo will receive. Our News 9's Aaron Brobeck is on the story at the Attorney General's office in Oklahoma City.
Richard and Ryan Tate pleaded no contest to 44 separate counts, including embezzlement and racketeering. They swindled their clients out of more than $800,000. Still, they won't spend a day behind bars. And Jamie Cole is furious. The third-grade teacher from Duncan always dreamed of being an author, so when she got the offer from Tate Publishing, she jumped at it.
They said, "We love these." I sent them 10 manuscripts in.
Cole paid the Tates thousands of dollars to publish her books, but the Tates went out of business.
Yeah, all my books that were on Amazon sold out.
Did you make money from that, or did Tates keep that?
I didn't make any money from that. No, they kept everything.
This plea agreement involves...
Now the state attorney general's office agreed to a deal with the Tates where the pair will not have to serve any prison time for their crimes.
They're just going to literally walk free, and here I sit without my money, without my books.
20 years of work down the drain.
And I'm really disappointed in our attorney general that he did that, because surely with all of the charges against them, they had to be looking at some kind of jail time. We're talking racketeering, money laundering. I mean, those are big crimes, and nothing.
The Tates will be on probation for 20 years and have to pay back the $825,000 they stole. The Attorney General's office says by staying out of prison, the Tates can raise the money to make restitution.
It's holding them responsible for the crimes they've committed, but also creating a regime where they're going to be able to hopefully get as much in restitution back to these victims as is reasonably possible.
No, they took our money and ran, and they're not going to receive any punishment for it whatsoever. And that's just not how it works in the real world.
And you got to feel for it, because if somebody steals your car today, the person who steals your car, the DA is not going to say, well, we're not going to put him in jail so that he can continue working to raise the money to pay you back for your car. The guy's going to jail. You're filing an insurance claim. You're probably paying a $500 deductible that's coming out of your pocket, but somebody's going to jail. But in this case, you know, you're going to get your car back. But in this case, you know, this woman, she's put years of her life into writing these books, into writing these manuscripts. They're gone. Gone.
The Attorney General says what?
Basically that these folks are going to need to be out of jail in order to get the money to pay back their victims. Who else does that? And what other crime can you name where people are told, yeah, so that you can reimburse your victims, we're going to keep you out of jail?
Well, I think Michael Cohen's going to jail. He's got to reimburse, spend a bunch of money. A lot of people have to go do the time and then go, well, it's interesting to see how that's going to turn out.
It's ticking off a lot of people, and justifiably so. But again, we were talking about prison reform. Again, the governor this week commuted the sentences of another 9 people, non-violent offenders. She did 21 a couple weeks back, so she's up to 30 people that she's commuted the sentences of on her way out, because she is a big fan of criminal justice reform. She understands the importance of it. Now, somebody more pessimistic could say, okay, 30 people, their sentences commuted, which it's important to know. That doesn't mean their sentences, it doesn't mean their convictions go away. It just means their sentences are reduced. They go home today, but they're still guilty of the crimes that they were convicted of. But, you know, those 30 people are going to be replaced today. There's going to be 30 arrests in Oklahoma today and 30 people going to prison today.
Our last question. Let me ask you, just pie in the sky. Bring up criminal justice reform, and we're seeing less and less media covering at the Capitol this week. My dad yesterday was down talking to him, and he's like, hey, in a few days, I'm not going to be able to have the paper thrown on the driveway anymore, right? So as the media shrinks, we know what happened with non-doc, it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. When it comes to criminal justice reform, I think it's charitable to say that some of the media is already, there's a lot of media in the state, not as much as there used to, but that some of the media is really kind of compromised in their ability to be objective about criminal justice reform because they've thrown in with some of the advocates that are for it. The question is, returning to our first topic that we talked about in terms of criminal justice reform, how is it going to be that the media is going to be able to look at some of the stuff that's coming through the pipes objectively, fairly, to discern between what's soft on crime and what's going to be tough on crime, or smart on crime, rather?
I think that we'll do it the way that we handle any other story. I mean, I don't think you'll find too many people who think that the criminal justice system, as is hunky-dory. So for journalists to say, yes, we do need some type of criminal justice reform, that's not unusual. You're not going to find anybody who says, yeah, we just need to keep on locking up people and we got to build more prisons. Nobody's saying that. So we're just going to take each one of these ideas as they come, look at them, I think objectively, and not just my station, but other stations as well, and the newspapers. I think they're going to look at them objectively because some of the ideas are going to be really good ideas, and some of them are going to be crap.
What a way to say Merry Christmas to each and everyone right off the bat there. Mr. Brillbeck, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Look forward to seeing you again real soon. We're going to take a week off, but see us again at news9.com/yourvote counts. Follow Aaron Brillbeck. Your Twitter handle is?
Oh, I don't know. Aaron Brillbeck or something like that.
We'll stick it up. Watch this. We'll put it up right here.
Not a big Twitter guy.
And at Mitchell Talks is mine. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. See you next year.